Biscuit Tin of Doom. Trevor Peavy looked at the biscuit tin. The biscuit tin looked at Trevor Peavy. Its glossy metal lid proclaimed that there were wonders and delights stored within. Ginger biscuits, chocolate fingers, sugar-sprinkled shortbread, and other such delicacies to tantalise taste buds. Trevor Peavy knew otherwise. One of the girls from Classy Couture had dropped by this morning with a waft of overpowering scent and a red, glossy smile. She had presented the tin as a gift to the staff of One Stop Wardrobe, wished them well, and minced her high-heeled way back down the high street to a tacky little boutique. Beware of Greeks bearing gifts, thought the overweight boarding store manager, as he rubbed his sweaty palms against the grey pinstripe material of his practical utilitarian suit. What were they playing at? Never had those young harpies ever shown any friendship or goodwill towards him and his staff. What was this really about? He had his theories. Yes, he did. Witches. That was what the scantily clad girls down the road were. They enticed the customers in with their charms and spells. Then, when they had the poor souls mesmerised, they magicked their plastic out of their wallets before sending them packing, laden down with flashy bags of cheap Indian imports. Why else would anyone purchase any of their tacky items of tat? And now, they were trying to take out the competition. Beware of Greeks bearing gifts. This was a Trojan horse, if ever he'd seen one. It had to be. But what little surprise did it hide within? It was not biscuits. That was for sure. In his mind's eye, Peavy saw himself prying open the lid, only to be sucked down into a maelstrom-like portal, some sort of fiery hell dimension. First, his head would be stretched out towards the swirling cataclysm that spun like an angry tornado. He would scream in agony as every millimetre of skin and tissue was sucked and warped towards the ravenous mouth. To no avail, his hand would try desperately to cling on to the melamine surface of the staff room table. And there would be a terrible squelching noise as his body was passed through the metaphysical ringer, depositing him alone and unaided in a world where screams and shrieks of agony carried on the wind that stank of sulphur. Or perhaps, when he opened the lid, there would be tentacles. Long green tentacles? They would lurch out of the tin in one fluid movement and wrap their powerful suckers around his helpless form. Their titanic grip would pin his arms immobile to his side, and he would not even be able to reach for his trusty Swiss Army knife that he always carried in his pocket. Trevor Peavy would feel his feet spring from the tiled floor as he was vaulted up over the tin by the swaying mass, and would peer down into their midst, wailing in horror as a vicious beak snapped open and shut beneath him. He would wriggle frantically, trying to escape, but the grasp of the creature would constrict tighter around him, as all he could hope for would be the bliss of unconsciousness, when it pulled him down to be devoured piece by piece. But what if it was a banshee? Imagine that. He would open up the lid, expecting to find some sweet, biscuity morsel, only to observe an ethereal green smoke waft out into the staff room. He would stand transfixed as it drifted lazily around the sink and through the handle of the rather nice mug which had saved the vouchers for from those packets of tea bags that time. It would curl seductively between the table legs before winding its way round him in a come-hither-my-dear manner, before coalescing into the form of a beautiful young woman with cascading blonde hair and the sweetest blue eyes. Peavy, the lifelong bachelor, would feel relief wash over him at the thought that this was not too bad after all, only to then cringe in terror as the phantasm opened her mouth and the noise began to emanate from her stretching lips, a noise like the moan of 1,000 mothers grieving the deaths of 1,000 children would begin to echo around the room and assault his eardrums. He would drop to his knees, his hands vainly covering his ears, whilst the banshee's mouth grew wider and wider, contorting her beautiful face into an obscene monstrosity. All the while the screech would increase in volume and intensity until finally Peavy's head would explode with a sickening pop, splattering his brains across the staff notice board. It could even be something worse. What if he opened the box and found it completely empty? He would stand there, puzzled and bemused, as he felt inside the empty metal tin, as he held it upside down and battered on the base to see if anything came out. Then things would start to happen around the world. There would be earthquakes and famine, plague and drought, war and financial collapse. Experts would be called in by the United Nations to study just what had caused these catastrophes, and they'd trace them all back to poor Trevor Peavy, who had inadvertently opened a Pandora's box and released countless woes and tribulations on the unsuspecting world. He would be hated and vilified. His life would become null and worthless overnight. His remaining days would be spent being chased from one town to another, and no one anywhere would dare to shelter this abhorrent little man until finally, one day, he would drop exhausted on a hillside, and carrion birds would descend upon him, pecking his wretched, withered body to death. No, the tin must never be opened. Whatever it contained would be a vile and devastating creation of wily magics. It would have to be destroyed. The staff room door swung open, and Gemma from the shoe concession walked in. "Woo, bickies!" she squealed in delight before opening the tin, choosing a couple of tasty-looking hobnobs, and making herself a cup of tea.